into the text basically through the back door. It's the end. In many ways, it's the end. A couple of things you may have noticed. For example, every time the name of the city is mentioned, Vladivostok, it's the ghost port. And there's a very interesting use of, I guess, what we would call Homeric epithets throughout the text. Tags, when Achilles is always fleet-footed Achilles, and things like that in Homer. He does the same thing in the novel. We notice Oksana's fixation with a poem. I can do this without a microphone. I mean, make noises.
This time it's not me. Yes, can you hear?
Yes, I hear you.
Anyway, a connection that I think is so important for readers here is, here we have a young woman who is a poet, who closely identifies with one of the great Russian lyric poets of the 20th century. And here is Jorge, a novelist, who is incorporating epic techniques and lyric techniques in a vast text, which is also essentially a meditation on history. So here we have the kind of Aristotelian balance between the particularity of literature and history, a particularity of history, and then the archetypal aspect of literary text. Now, I'm talking as a critic and not as a translator, but I just felt that chapter is so brilliant that it needed a little elucidation, and I hope I haven't obfuscated rather than illuminated. But maybe you tell me where I'm wrong.
Thank you very much. You enlightened me about the chapter. Well, but it's true. When I started writing this book, I was thinking about writing a novel about the end of the Soviet Union. So at the time, I thought that maybe the sensation that we had in 1989 when the fall of the Berlin Wall, and then 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, was maybe the same or parallel to the idea that the ancient Greeks had at the time of the fall of Troy. So that's why I decided to make this use of epical technical resources in order to show the parallelism between the fall of Troy and the fall of the Soviet Union. So we are all here, or almost all here, experienced the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Soviet Union, and I was thrilled at the time to imagine that an empire that we thought was going to be one of the most powerful nations until the 21st century suddenly collapsed in one period of 5 years. Gorbachev took power in 1985, and in 1999 the Soviet Union was no more existent. So that's why I had this intuition that maybe the fall of Troy was also similar in this way. And this is the chapter I prefer in the novel, because I wanted to tell the story of the end of the 20th century and the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Soviet Union through the eyes of 5 women. First hand, I wanted to do that with 3 women. So I decided it would be an American, a Russian, and a Hungarian American. So to have three different points of view of the end of the 20th century. The American is an economist, and she is one of the members of the International Monetary Fund. The Russian is a biologist, married with a Soviet biologist too, and both became dissidents at the end of the Soviet era. And the third one, Eva, is a Hungarian that comes to the United States after the Soviet invasion of Hungary and becomes an expert in artificial intelligence. So we have many ways of seeing the end of the 20th century through the lives and the points of view of these three women. But during the process of writing this novel, I discovered that there were two more women very important for me. The sister of this American, the American economist is called Jennifer, and his sister is Allison, who is the opposite of her. He is an activist, human rights and environment and all the good causes of the left, and especially Oksana, the daughter of Irina and Arkady, and I really love this character. It's my favorite in the book, and it's always a little weird to imagine that the novelist would fall in love with one of her characters, but I fell in love with Oksana because he's the only one who is not responsible for what is happening during the end of the conflict. He's only a victim. He, as I told before, she didn't understand the times of the Soviet Union, and when the Russian communism is ended, she doesn't understand either what's happening with the capitalist new world in Russia. So she's the real victim of history, and his personal story is almost a metaphor of many people during the end of the 20th century, especially in the communist countries, in the ex-communist countries.
So you can see that one of the problems in doing the translation was not, let's say, the use of excessive slang or local languages, but the fact that Jorge deploys a number of specialized languages. It's almost like a Bakhtinian experiment, because there's the language of economy, there is the language of biology, the big experiment with the genome is brought up, and so I was running to Google every 5 or 10 minutes just to figure out what the hell this was. And that all had to be made coherent somehow, or at least coherent to me.
Yes, one other metaphor, as I was thinking that about this parallel between the fall of Troy and the fall of the Soviet Union, it's not only in these Homeric epithets, but it's also in other ways in the novel. So, for example, when I was reading the books of Homer again, I saw that the heroes of the Iliad and the Odyssey were always struggling with the gods and demigods. So for this novel, I decided that the gods and demigods will be the genes. So the metaphor is that these egoistic genes, as Richard Dawkins calls them, are the new gods that we have inside, and we have to struggle against the ideas and the desires of these genes in order to have free will, as Achilles or Hector had to do, struggling with the desires of the gods in the Greeks' epic.
It really is a key theme in 20th century literature, and certainly is with us now in a very real way.